from civilian and military commanders. And then they failed to tell us the truth later.
An example of the incompetence is that NORAD sent fighter jets in the wrong direction.
NORAD mission commander ordered his only 3 other planes on alert in Virginia to scramble and fly north to Baltimore. Minutes later, when he was told that a plane was approaching Washington, he learned that the planes were flying east over the Atlantic Ocean, away from Baltimore and Washington. So that when the 3rd plane struck the Pentagon, NORAD's fighters were 150 miles away, farther than they were before they took off.
Some people dismiss these acts of incompetence as innocent mistakes. However, Senator Dayton described it this way.
This is just unbelievable negligence.
Senator Dayton also pointed out that if we allow government officials to lie to us, and if we allow them to falsify documents, and if we allow them to be unbelievably negligent, it doesn't matter how many laws we pass or how much money we spend on commissions or investigations.
And we can set up all of the oversight possible at great additional cost to American taxpayers, and it won't be worth an Enron pension if the people responsible lie to us. If they take their records and doctor them into falsehoods, and if they get away with it.
Senator Dayton is just one of millions of people around the world who is disappointed with the American government. He is just one of millions of people complaining about the incompetence, the doctored reports, and the lies. Let's set a good example for the world by encouraging people to question official reports. The 9/11 Commission report tells us that NORAD was incompetent. However, Barry Zwicker, a journalist in Canada, points out that there may be more behind the scenes because nobody at NORAD was reprimanded for their incompetence.
Throughout the northeastern United States are many air bases. But that morning, no interceptors respond in a timely fashion to the highest alert situation. This includes the Andrews squadrons, which have the longest lead time and are 12 miles from the White House. Whatever the explanation for the huge failure, there have been no reports to my knowledge of reprimands. This further weakens the incompetence theory. Incompetence usually earns reprimands. This causes me to ask, and other media need to ask, if there were stand-down orders.
Zwicker also points out that President Bush told school children that he saw the first airplane crash into the North Tower, and about 20 minutes later, as he was sitting in the classroom, he was told of the second plane crash.
From the transcript of a town hall session in Orlando, Florida on December the 4th. Jordan, a 3rd grader. How did you feel when you heard about the terrorist attack? Applause. The President. Thank you, Jordan. Well, Jordan, I was sitting outside the classroom waiting to go in, and I saw an airplane hit the tower. The TV was obviously on. And I used to fly myself, and I said, well, there's one terrible pilot. But I was whisked off there. I didn't have much time to think about it. And I was sitting in the classroom, and Andy Card, my chief of staff, walked in and said, a second plane has hit the tower. America is under attack. And Jordan, I wasn't sure what to think at first. Wait a minute. The President tells us he saw the incredible image of the first plane going in.
Nobody saw the first crash on television because no television crews were filming the towers at the time. This particular video of the first crash comes from a handheld camera that was recording to videotape. The television studios did not even know this video existed until hours later. If President Bush is correct that he saw the first plane crash before he entered the classroom, that means somebody was sending live video of the World Trade Center towers to the Florida classroom, and from some other camera. The 9/11 report does a nice job of showing the incompetence and lies of NORAD, but it leaves lots of unresolved issues that are much more troubling. For example, the official story is that fire caused both towers to disintegrate, but no steel-framed skyscraper has ever been destroyed from a fire. How did fire destroy steel buildings on September 11th when fire has never destroyed steel buildings before or since? Building 7 collapsed at 5:30 in the evening. This was another steel-framed skyscraper, and with 47 stories, it was almost half the height of the towers. How and why did this building crumble? No airplane hit it. In May 2002, FEMA released a report in which they claimed they have no idea what happened to Building 7. Since they don't know what happened, how can they tell us Osama was responsible? The official story is that the towers collapsed as one floor hit the floor below it, and then those floors hit the floor below them, causing a chain reaction. However, videotapes and seismic data show that the floors were falling at free-fall speed, which is a sign that the floors were not encountering any resistance as they hit one another. How can the floors of a steel building fall on top of one another without slowing down every time they hit another floor? As the floors fell down, clouds of dust were thrown hundreds of feet horizontally. Analysis of this dust by the government shows that it was full of concrete. How did the concrete in these towers pulverize into such a fine dust? And what caused the dust to be thrown hundreds of feet outward? NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey measured the temperature of the rubble 5 days after the collapse. Some areas of the rubble were above the melting point of aluminum. How can a building fall down and leave such incredibly hot rubble, especially with firemen spraying water on it? The editor of Fire Engineering magazine was so disgusted by the government's investigation that he wrote in the January 2002 issue that the investigation was a half-baked farce. The military and FBI are still refusing to release the security videos that show Flight 77 crashing into the Pentagon. Why are we not allowed to see what happened? These are just a few of the unresolved issues of the September 11th attack. There are also unresolved issues about Flight 93, which crashed in Pennsylvania. The official story is that less than 24 Arabs conspired to attack America on September 11th. But even if only one of the points of this video are true, then the conspiracy is much larger than the government claims it was. Let's now take a more in-depth look into some of the events of September 11th. Let's begin by looking at the collapse of Building 7, a 47-story steel-framed building. At 5:30 in the evening, this building crumbled into a pile of rubble. Here's a different view of the collapse. And another view. The person who took this next video decided to point his camera at Building 7 at just the right moment. If you've never seen a demolition of an old building, there's a DVD called What a Blast that shows how buildings are demolished. Notice that the dust comes from the base of the building, just as with Building 7. Also, the building falls down very quickly because the pieces are free-falling. They often cause the middle of the building to fall first, in order to pull the outer walls inward. PBS has a documentary called America Rebuilds, in which Larry Silverstein, the landlord of Building 7, explains what happened.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
FEMA claims they have no idea why Building 7 collapsed. Silverstein claims the fire department demolished Building 7 rather than bother putting out the fires. However, it takes more than a few hours to set up the demolition of such a large skyscraper. Besides, the building had a few fires burning inside. The tenants never had a chance to remove their possessions, and the area was crowded with rescuers who were searching for survivors. Who would even think of demolishing Building 7 during such a disaster? Don't these suspicious aspects of Building 7 justify a more in-depth investigation?